You got to come back to the main very core strength is the patient is very sick and fighting for her life. So you can go through your little genetic conundrums if you want to, and try to prove that you got to perfect that and have multiple reads that and everything else. Look, I understand the molecular world very well, but I also understand the clinical aspect. The clinical aspect is that if you have a suffering patient and they're experiencing some very aggressive metastatic cancer from head to toe, and they're very sick fighting for their life, you got to do what you got to do.
Welcome to Metabolic Matters podcast, where we embark on conversations with thought leaders, disruptors, change agents, and passionate souls. I'm your host, Dr. Nasha Winters. Diagnosed with terminal cancer at 19 years old, my journey led me to become an integrative oncology specialist and champion of metabolic healing. Together, we'll delve into what truly matters to our guests and how you can metabolize that wisdom to transform your own metabolic health. Now let's meet today's guests. Welcome back to Metabolic Matters, where we explore cutting-edge science and the art of health creation. I'm Dr. Nasha Winters, and today I have the privilege of sitting down with Dr. John A. Catanzaro, a pioneer whose path has taken him from theology and medical ethics to the front lines of molecular medicine. As CEO and co-founder of Neo7Bioscience, Dr. Catanzaro is reimagining what personalized medicine looks like, designing custom immunopeptides and using multi-omics to decode disease at its very core. His story is as much about vision and resilience as it is about science. And I think you're going to leave this conversation inspired by the possibilities of where medicine is headed. Everybody, I am so excited for this conversation today. I was trying to think, Doc, of the very first time I heard of you, because we're both, naturopathic doctors by training. We both have worked in this field for a long time. And I remember hearing about you many years ago. We're going to go into that story here in a moment. But one of the things that intrigued me about you is your perseverance and your resilience during incredibly stressful times where you were being basically persecuted by not just the standard of care medical community, but even the naturopathic medical care community. And yet today, here you still are, following your own inner compass, your own true north, following the data and following your integrity, which has helped thousands, if not tens of thousands of patients have a very different outcome. And so for that, I'm just super grateful and inspired by your perseverance in the face of all of that. And so I'd love for the listeners to hear a little bit about who you are and why we're even starting a conversation today. But welcome so much, John. I'm really, really pleased to have you here, Doc.
Thank you, Nasha. I appreciate that so much. Thanks. It's really great to be on with you. And, yes, we go back a ways, don't we? So way back to Bastyr University, when, where I was at, even before that, let's start when I grew up in the Bronx. Okay.
Yes. Maybe that explains some of your resilience.
Well, the family in New York that had many seafood fish stores in the 5 boroughs. And then I started working at a very young age. My grandfather had me working, going to the Fulton Fish Market when I was like, starting when I was a kid. Man, he actually took me when I was 5 and 6 years old, just going to the market with him. I told Nathan Goodyear this story too, and Nathan just loved it. And, growing up in that kind of a tradition, the work ethic was formed at a very early age. And then, but I knew, Nasha, that I didn't want to go into the fish business. That's not who I was. It's like,
Thank God.
Yeah, I knew I needed to do something else. There was something didn't resonate with me. I really loved it. I mean, I learned a lot, so many different things that I learned. But my transformation actually occurred when I actually joined the Air Force, and I was able to then begin to put my big boy boots on and say, okay, I need to start making decisions. And you learn a lot of different disciplines when you're in the military. And I got to do that, but not only that, but I had the privilege of being around some very sophisticated technology at a very early age.
Wow.
So I'm just thinking, I was just blown away by the opportunities I had when I was in the Air Force. And then of course I worked in the aerospace industry after I got out of the Air Force for another 5 or 6 years or so with the Boeing company. And, that gave me the ground substance of being able to start navigating into, because I always had a yearning inside to be a doctor. I always wanted to practice medicine, but I didn't want to go into practicing medicine with what I saw in the real world. I was just thinking, no, that's not the medicine that I want to practice. What I really want to practice is I want to practice something that really gets down to the root, that really kind of get you in to establish the relationship with the person, help them go on the journey with them, all the things that you're familiar with, right? Really important, like the connection of the heart in the medicine, so to speak, the connection of the soul in the medicine. I mean, that's what I was really interested from a very early part of that process. And the interesting thing about me getting into Bastyr was it wasn't an automatic. I actually had to go through and finish up on some other, sciences that I didn't get in my general education before, because I just had I wasn't really strong in the sciences. So they said, you got to do this. And I was knocking on Ron Hobbs' door.
Oh, no way.
Forever. This guy just kept on showing up. And then I was showing up, and Ron said, you back again here? He said, yeah. I said, I really want to get into this program. He said, well, are you almost done? I said, yeah, right. And so he said, well, you know what? I'm going to have you meet Joe, Joe Pizzorno. And so
good old, that guy, that one guy.
Old Joe, Joe Pizzorno. Wow. Right. So
kind of like the father of modern naturopathic medicine.
Yeah. So I got to meet Joe, and then, I kept on showing up, and I was working at the time, and I was just thinking, okay, I was taking these needed things at the community college to kind of get those sciences in. So I didn't have, and so I worked at it, finally got the acceptance letter. Joe sends me an acceptance letter saying you're in. So it's like, it was a great day that day. It was a great day. And
right there, Doc, it really just shows your persistence.
Yes.
Because you had to jump through a few more. Like you'd already had your undergrad, you already had your career,
yes.
You already had your undergraduate under your belt, and you had to go back and basically start over.
Yes,
to start a whole new life. That's something.
Yes, and then that journey began, right? So I was, when I was still working at Boeing when I got accepted into med school. So I was working. I was so privileged to work. I was on, a third shift or a second shift. So they kept on putting me on second and third shift. So I was able to go to finish school, the classes during the day, and before you know it. But then I knew that if I'm going to go in the second year, I'm going to have to make a commitment to say I'm going to have to stop working there and just take odd jobs. So that's what I did. I quit Boeing, took odd jobs to give my full focus into Bastyr, right? And do what I needed to do there. Yeah.
What's so wild is like thinking about the naturopaths of our time. So what years would this have been?
Oh, this was, I started that. Well, I graduated in 95. So I started that whole process. I went through the 5-year track. So if you think about it, my journey started probably in 86 or so, or something like that.
Kind of going back to school to get your pre-med sciences to get
going. Yeah.
And at the time, so even when I started naturopathic school in 96. So a year after you graduated. And at that time, 70% of the students in my class at that time, there were 52 of us,
Yes.
were non-traditionals, meaning they had already had other careers just like you. That was more the norm then. That's changed a lot, which actually, this is probably important to plant this seed now because we'll come back to this conversation. It's like a foreshadowing, if you will.
Yes.
But there were a lot of people with very unique backgrounds in my classroom, just like I'm sure just like your story and probably in your classroom, where today they're more the traditional students who finish their pre-med and undergrad and jump right into medical school. That was not the case in naturopathic medicine back at the time.
Right.
And so I wanted to plant that seed because I think that says something about even the difference of the way you were trained, I was trained, and how students today are being trained.
Yes, agreed. I do agree with that. And the journey began, but learning so much in that process there, you got to have mental toughness in order to get through that process, right? You know that. And the thing is that I remember my anatomy professor, Aliyama, you know her, Aliyama, remember
Oh, heck
her?
yes.
So Aliyama Thomas is her, Dr. Thomas. You remember Dr. Thomas?
Yeah.
So we were
Dr. Thomas.
Yes. So she says that, John, she says, I know that you're going through this, this process. And she says, but I want to ask you a question. She says, I have some dents on my car. Do you think you could help fix them? Because she knew that I was taking odd jobs. And so what I did is I actually repaired several dents on her car, and I did a finish process on that. And she was just like, oh man, I had a friend for life. She was like, it was just amazing. So, and these little things. And of course, I love playing music. So I'm a musician. I play keyboard and drums and this and like that. And a lot of that was happening over there at Bastille. So I was constantly asked to play, piano in different at different times. So that was kind of a really nice thing. But now when you get into the clinical part, I knew from getting into the clinical that I needed to do something different than what's out there and, far outside of what the norm is. And from an innovative standpoint, because in my heart, that's the kind of person the fabric I come from, more innovation, more thinking forward, more counterintuitive, those type of things. And I knew that, I needed to be equipping myself. And so I was very progressive in the didactic at the Bastille. So I managed to early on started doing preceptorships with MDs, DOs, oncologists, rotations in the emergency room, rotations and, working with different surgeons and this and that. So I had a lot of opportunities to learn very broadly what that landscape is looking like. And then when I finally graduated, and how you go out there and you're saying, well, I don't have any money to start a practice. So what do I need to do? So you go to the bank and they're saying, well, we can't give you any money. You have to show us what you have. What kind of assets do you have? If you need money, they're not going to give you money. You have to show them that you don't need money. So that, right. Well, at the time, you know what I mean? Everybody's going to say, well, I need a small practice loan. Right. So really how it started was in the basement of my house.
Yes.
With 2 rooms. Right. And then it graduated to a larger clinic in Mount Lake Terrace. And then it graduated to a larger clinic in the Bothell area, which was our final resting, final place there. And we wind up having, we were teaching a lot of students, residents, medical students. We had anywhere from 6 to 8 physicians at one time. And we were specializing in integrative cancer treatment and chronic integrative treatment and chronic illness too, right? And we're seeing a lot of patients, and it was a blast. I mean, I was having so much fun, but I was being challenged every day to get better at what was being done, and that's how this whole thing was born, out of like patients that would be brought in. I never forget one of my first patients. Her first name was Tammy. And her husband brought her in, carried her in. She was emaciated. She could hardly talk. So, you would ask her a question and she could hardly whisper. But her husband was able to say, is there anything you can do to help my wife stay alive, to get well? And, and I'm just thinking, this lady can't eat. She can hardly speak. She's lost so much weight that she's so weak. So what can we possibly do? We know a lot about diet. We know a lot about nutritional supplementation. We know that forced me to think outside the box immediately. It was like, I had this it was like, okay, so we need to be. So that's when the intravenous therapeutics began, even before they were popular in Washington State.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was doing it before a lot of people. It wasn't even in our scope of practice, but I was doing it. Right.
He's a rebel with a cause, guys. A rebel with a cause.
Now it's in our scope. So it's like, so you get there. A lot of people were helped. And then one beyond that was like even getting to the personalized movement of identifying the problem. So that's where we started working on identifying what cancers were demonstrating what type of patterns. And we were isolating these things out in the urine, which are known as peptide fragments. So we isolated these fragments out and we purified these fragments that identified what they were. And, but even before we identified it, we were just giving the patients back their peptide fragments, that were, part of their treatment plan. And these patients miraculously began to get better and their tumors began to shrink. And their metastases began to go, down quite significantly. And a lot of patients cleared the disease. Like within a year, patients were clearing diseases this way.
Dr. John, on that, before you move forward, just so the listeners have some context, in our world, in our training, we learned things like homeopathy. And from that, we learned concepts of nosodes and isopathic remedies.
Yes.
Would you classify what you were doing initially sort of in like roughly in that category? Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I can. What I was pretty much doing was following the biohomeotoxicological approach. And Dr. Reckwake's work with, a lot of the embryological layers of disease. And I really specialized in that by saying, look, we really need to create a bioregulation, but that bioregulation needs to be rooted in a constitutional energetic. And it needs to be rooted in a good science fabric. So why not go back to the embryological mechanisms, how these tissue layers develop, how the layers of illness relate to the embryological layers, and that biohomeotoxicological approach became like a central theme of driving an illness that's deeply embedded out of the body. And the Herring's law of cure was part of that. And, the law of similars was part of that. And, all of these different things. And, but when it came to like the science and the molecular world, what I was able to do is I was able to tie in that space into understanding the molecular fabric part, which I continue to learn a lot about that every moment.
Wow.
I can tell you every day, and every moment of the day, there's not a single day that goes by that I'm not learning something new about this molecular fabric, right?
Amazing.
It's incredible.
Amazing. And just knowing that there'll be definitely a couple old time naturopaths listening to this discussion, but a lot of those names you just rattled off are near and dear to our world. They are some of the fathers of homeopathy, fathers of nature cure, fathers, of bioregulatory medicine.
Yes.
These are the sort of the foundational construct of where you and I we have the same basic science background and training as our conventional colleagues, but our philosophy and another layer or lens that we look through is through some of these people that you just described, some of these teachings that you just described that is no longer taught in allopathic standard of care medicine today. So what is also very interesting about this, Dr. John, and I want to really drive this home, I am not sure if these people or these theories are still taught in current modern day naturopathic medicine. Mm-hmm. My experience of when these students were doing rotations in my office is that they were not, or they were we talk about it a little bit in the very beginning, we talk about it a little bit in the end, and in between, you forget it all and you just go full steam ahead into the allopathic mindset and the narrowed, reductionistic approach to health, or disease management, I should say, not healthcare.
Yes.
And so I really want folks to let this sink in that what Dr. John's experience was in his training is not really accessible you have to really go and seek it out, self-learned, or find some of these old school clinicians to learn from. I, like John, on every break I had, I was in those offices. I did not take holidays during my medical school training. I did not learn my craft in school, just like Dr. John did not learn his craft in school.
Right.
Really, if you want to be a good clinician, and I'm saying this for anyone listening who's in medical school or thinking about it, you will not learn what you're going to learn to help people in your medical training, whether that's naturopathic medical school, standard of care medical school, osteopathic medical school, probably even chiropractic today. These are the things I want folks to hear, that Dr. John is from a bygone era in vitalistic medical studies. But what I think is super cool is you have this brain and you have this ability to bridge these vitalistic ideas into very real molecular, mechanistic concepts. So I felt like that's really important. So people are going, what did he just say? I want them to see that you are unique and that you have really brought ancient wisdom into modern practice and really woven them together in a very unique way. So apologies for the interruption, but I just thought it was so important.
I so appreciate that, because I think that foundation is important to realize that, it's not about just a rational approach, where you take, mechanistic movement and rationale, the rational approach in medicine. I was able to understand from an early point that there's a counterintuitive sense, and there's actually, if you're going to have an engineering mind, you still have to have the artistic expression. So it's very hard to put those two together and allow them to work in unison, because one oftentimes will kind of counteract or contradict the other, right? So in a lot of times in molecular medicine, what they want is absolute proof that something is happening. And in the real world, if you have a patient that's suffering with a very, very crippling disease and you're looking for absolute proof, what really matters is the crippling disease that you're actually seeing, the clinical manifestation of the suffering of that person. So you actually have to put ground substance to that. And that means that you may find something that may be rejected by others initially, but as time goes on, you will discover that it is moving in the direction of validity and proof, right? But you can't develop proof right off the bat. You actually have to work at creating that opportunity. I mean, that opportunity going forward is really important, because there's always the sentinel. You always got the sentinel study that's opening up the door. And, naturopaths and doctors who practice this type of medicine that's foundationally, it's got a lot of grit to it, but it's also got a lot of grace to it too, right? They have a profound opportunity to really practice a foundationally strong medicine, but they are not limited if they decide that they're an engineer, they're an innovative person or whatever. They're not limited. You can move a lot further. I have had the opportunity to actually assist a lot of people, break the ice and say, but why? Okay, so they get to the place where they think that's mundane practice every day. I said, take the mundane out of it. Start doing something that's different that nobody else is doing, right? And morph that into a transformative medicine and give yourself the opportunity to do that and allow that to evolve, right? So nothing is perfect when you start, but you actually have to open up that door. And opening up the door, right? As well as I do, sometimes further investigation is needed, always, right? And the thing about it is that if you're keeping the door open, you're not refuting your hypothesis. You're only getting better at demonstrating the twists and turns that need to make that hypothesis better over time, right? When you get to see patients getting better and your hypothesis is actually being proven,
That's a pretty
That's what
glorious
counts.
day. Yeah,
That's what counts. The bottom
Yeah.
line.
So amazing. So you started out with these sort of naturopathic, homeopathic, biomedical regulatory concepts that led to this innovation of what Neo7 is today. So for those who are completely unfamiliar, which I'm assuming most people listening to this conversation haven't a clue of what we're talking about here, can you break down what is Neo7?
Yep. Neo7 is simply looking at the unseen world, basically. The things that you are trying to understand, looking at it from a very strong standpoint of molecular relationships. And when you're looking at that, a lot of times a person will come with a physical expression of a disease pattern, and you go through your differential diagnosis and you try to figure out what it is, and you do your blood testing. And we're looking a lot deeper than that. We're looking at the deep definition expression of what we call surveillance of the system to see what makes those cells, behave the way they do, especially when they are exposed to an adverse environment, or they're intrinsically hit sideways or extrinsically hit, something from the inside, something from the outside. And you get to see the molecular dynamics shifting and turning based upon what the exposures are. And the thing is that we're looking at the unseen world, and we're getting to understand how those dynamics work in unison to keep systems working and communicating and cross-talking and staying in sync with each other, right? So from the standpoint of genetics, everybody's saying, well, not all illnesses have genetics at their basis, right? That's a general state. We don't really want to, say that every illness has a basis of genetics to explain its reason, because, but we will say every illness that is harbored in the individual, if they're battling it, their body's taken a position, and their body is taking a position to be able to forward engineer something better. But sometimes it needs help to do that, right? And our molecular expression is that. It's not like you're trying to prove a genetic basis for every disease. What you're trying to do is to demonstrate how the molecular shifts and turns can actually be influenced in a better way to allow a better adaptation forward for resilience.
MitoVita isn't another supplement line. It's a cellular medicine in a bottle. Created with Dr. Ahmed El-Saka and myself, each formula is clean, practitioner designed, and terrain approved to support pathways like blood sugar balance, sleep, and mitochondrial function. Explore the line at mitovita.com. Let's get back to your mitochondria. I love this. So to reframe it, let me make sure I'm getting this correct. It's almost like you are recognizing patterns and then harnessing them to transform the environment back to equilibrium.
Yes, back to an equilibrium and back to a better adaptive forward engineering where, so I usually say the body has the amazing ability to forward and reverse engineer itself. I mean, if the body has those capabilities, naturally speaking, it's a powerhouse. And that powerhouse,
and we're underutilizing it.
We're underutilizing
because we're looking for the external answer.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Mm.
And the thing is that there's a lot of elements out there that are, that strike the organism, that strike the physiognomy of our being in the molecular sense, and really can try to capsize us in that space. And so it's really important to recognize how we can better identify and protect the body against those assaults. And a lot of the times we use the best of our best in our integrative practices and nutrition and diet, exercise, ways of eating, I should say, exercising, our state of mind, our mental frame, our spiritual frame. All of those different things are so essential for better better and better. And they do get us into that space. But sometimes we hit a wall and we don't understand why. And sometimes it's just about recalibrating or re-regulating, or I like to say it's an edit program. Either you're editing for get the body to do something it forgot to do long ago, or you're editing something that the body has never done well.
Wow.
Right?
So fascinating. Yeah. I'd never thought of it that way. That's
because that crosstalk relationship is happening all the time. Protein to protein interactive crosstalk, cellular to cellular communication. All of these are working on this energetic and biophysical realm, to where these communication pathways are astounding. You get to see this in this string relationship in every compartment of the body. You get to see it in the microbiome. You get to see it, in the immune competence realm. You get to see it in a lot of these, that how the brain interface, what the brain interface is, the brain-gut axis, all of these things. You're very familiar with that, Nasha. You're the brain-gut axis specialist. I mean, you know exactly what's happening there, Yeah.
Yeah. This is huge. And so, my gosh, because I'm imagining, I can almost now see the path that took you to this moment, from just the type of training you had to the type of mind that you have, to get you to the moment of what was the moment that you had the Neo7 breakthrough? Like, when was the moment that this all came together of a therapeutic intervention that can help people with severe chronic illness, or even like cancers, to have a different experience, a different outcome? Like, what was that moment for you? When did all of your training and all of your life experience coalesce to create this new innovation? Not even new anymore, but this innovation in healthcare as we know it.
Well, that's when the people were. It was like I guess the energy was there to where it was attracting. I didn't ask for, so many cancer patients coming in with very advanced stage cancers, and I was just thinking, whoa, I'm attracting this to. We're attracting this to ourselves from not just from the state of Washington, but we're getting patients from everywhere. Even outside of the United States. And I was just thinking, okay, so that was my moment. That was my aha moment, that you can make a mark on most cases, but you can't really maybe help every case that comes in your door. A lot of the people that we worked with, they got better, and there were a lot of people that we worked with that struggled, and we were working through those struggles. And that's where we learned a lot. It's through the people that we weren't able to help completely that we were learning a lot more information about why is this happening. And that cemented that moment in to where you've got to do more. You've got to be able to do more in this area to really uncover this and to develop something that's going to work better. And so,
amazing.
After all that stuff happened in the state of Washington, just going back where people were getting better. But you know how that all happened, Nasha? It happened through a patient who triple negative breast cancer, had a big melon-sized tumor on her mastectomy site. She was bleeding, needed to be transfused every 3 days, and she will race against the clock. And we developed her personalized peptide treatment for her, and then within weeks, she was breaking down tumor in large clumps and pieces, and they didn't have to transfuse her anymore. But now what happened was she went to her oncologist and told the oncologist, who was the chief of the breast center at Swedish.
I know where this is going.
What she did, and what's happening there. And immediately that lady called up the state of Washington and said, this dude is practicing way out of his scope, and he's harming patients, and click. And that's when the whole investigation process began. It started back in 2012, and it lasted all the way up to 2017. Yeah.
Wow. So that's when, I'd heard about your work because we were both in the oncology, integrative oncology space. But even back in 2012, we weren't all as connected in as we are today.
Right.
And I was hearing about your work. I was hearing about these amazing outcomes. I was definitely giving patients that were getting better and having experiences. But where I really heard about you is when you were being attacked. I mean, you were being eviscerated by the medical board, your own as well as the standard of care. And this journey is so devastating to me because, Dr. John, this is not, I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen this exact story play out. I think about so many of our colleagues in the naturopathic community in particular, but the integrative space, who have helped a patient who then that patient went back to say to their oncology team, hey, look what this person did. Either like, F you didn't help me at all, or wow, isn't this cool?
Yeah.
And it backfired in a big way. And it wasn't about somebody doing something wrong. It was about somebody's ego being hurt.
Yep.
And it was about someone's cognitive dissonance fighting against a narrative and fighting against a system that they had been indoctrinated in. And so this is what led to you had GoFundMe sites. There were so much outpouring of love and care from your patients.
Many.
Can you talk about that time frame? Because it must have been so confusing realizing people were alive with quality and quantity of life because of you and the things that you had learned and applied.
Yes.
And yet you were being eviscerated by your medical system, by your board and all around you, and naysayers and media and all the things.
It was a real storm. It was a whirlwind. And when that, we call it it was like a Black Tuesday that came, and, then you had law enforcement coming in saying that they were threatening to take me away in handcuffs because of blah, blah, blah. What are you talking about? Closing down the clinic and this and that. It was terrible. I mean, it was all these things. And of course, then when we had at first the wrong attorney representation, they're kind of like, they were the mediating attorneys, not the bulldog ones that fight you, right? So what winds up happening, I was told that I needed to hush and not say anything, and that I needed to, the more I would say, the more I would probably put my foot in my mouth, and that I would need to keep silent. So I had all these people that were advising me incorrectly. So, hindsight, I look back and I should have been as vocal could be. And if I was to have that opportunity again, that's exactly what I would do. But the thing about it, you stand on your medicine, you stand on what you practiced, you stand on what you know is the truth. You stand on all of those things, and you do not back down, right? And I'll tell you what, I was doing it, but I wasn't having the full support of, every area. So it got tiring, and I was just running out of resources, and I was just thinking, that's it. I retired. I just, shut everything down and just did consulting work in 2017. And of course, my wife here has been a big part of my helping to really make sense of it all, where she actually assisted she would listen for hours and hours of the experiences that I had. She's always been my strong supporter, and like a lot of supporters out there were many of them. A lot of patients came and told their stories. A lot of patients are telling their stories even now. We get calls from people, from back in the clinic days, and they're constantly talking about their experiences. And but you know how it is. You get to the point where you just don't know. Okay, where do I go from here? Like you were just saying earlier, what is that turning point? And the turning point was I needed that time to think, the silent time to think about recalibrating and what to do, knowing what the infrastructure that I had before to draw upon the strength of that, and to reinvent that movement and reinvent that process. And then, and that happened when I was at the dining room table in Mazatlan. That's when that happened.
Amazing. And thank God for it. And so walk people through what are these peptides you're talking about? What is PBIMA? What's Revis? Like, walk people through what this has evolved into.
Yes. Okay. So since we've been a company in Neo7, and Neo is new. 7 is like the best of the best, the perfect representation, or the going in, ad infinitum. It's like you don't stop. You keep on going. You go forward. You re-engineer. You continue. since we've been a company in 2019, we have actually gone through 5 generations of technology advancements, right? So like PBIMA is a precision-based immunomolecular augmentation. That is actually a patented system what we call a molecular surveillance and prediction engineering system. So what it does is it takes the complete molecular expressions of a person and all their molecular data points, and it actually constructs an engineering using polypeptides to direct targets that are faulty in disease expression. And in resilience, it's simple. In resilience, it's doing the same technology, but enhancing those signals to do better and to allow for better performance and longevity, right?
Right. And is that like an enrichment process happening within a laboratory?
Yes. Okay. And so what happens is that the peptides that are engineered to those aberrant targets or those faulty targets are specific to the patient's own expressive biology. So it's taking the disease biology and the expressive biology of the person. And it is saying, where is the definitive faulty movement? And how do we allow for the better communication path to happen? In addition to all those other wonderful modalities that actually enhance. When you have a good hub strategy, that's what this is. It's a hub strategy that allows for a more intelligent driving system that allows for a better sensitivity across the board to perk with better energetics. And that's what we see when we see all these people that perk up, because the polypeptide engineering specific to those aberrant targets are then creating the wake-up call that, the sleepy systems that haven't been doing their job, basically. Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a lot of talk now. I mean, my gosh, you've been at this long enough now as well that everyone in the standard of care really poo-pooed the idea of individual therapies, cancer vaccines. They poo-pooed the idea of the immune system having any role in the oncology space. And now it is all the rage. That's where the research is. It's looking at microbiome fingerprints. It's looking at immune enhancement or changes, manipulations. It's looking at personalization. You were way ahead of the curve here. And yet, even though they're using that language, they're not truly personalized. They're still like made in a lab and then applied to the masses.
That's correct.
And you are truly individualizing each and every person, which many in standard of care would say, well, that's just impossible. We can't scale that. That's not doable, but you're doing it and you've been doing it. So can you walk us through, what does it look like for a patient? Like you started to talk about that woman whose husband brought her in that could barely speak. Like, what did that process or does that process look like for somebody who comes to you? What is the workflow? What is the process?
Yes, a good question, because, when a person is that close to, we're not certain of what their prognosis is. And of course, I've never listened to prognosis and I've never listened to diagnosis, right? Because those are earth terms that create, death watches for people. I mean, it's like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to focus on life, and we're going to focus on life abundantly, and we're going to focus on getting that life rolling in the right direction. Because the key is that, are these cases races against the clock? Reality is absolutely they are. We've had a lot of race against the clock cases. You could talk with Nathan about that. We've had a lot of race against the clock cases. Some of them have made it and some of them have not made it, right? But the thing about it is the ones that have not made it, we've learned a lot of information about. The ones who have made it, we just thought, wow, that was by the sweat of our brow. It's like, right? But the thing about it is that when you have an intelligent driving system, you've got more of a N of one true that is going to pull them out of a tailspin. So the journey basically is you get the molecular expression from the body fluids, the blood, the urine, right? The tumor is yesterday. It's not always reliable. The tumor is not always a reliable means. It's a yesterday picture. You get it from the blood, you get it from the urine, you get it from the body tissues. And then you begin to build and multiplex and get all of those data points that, the very big expressions, by the way, because there's a lot of data points and they cover different things. We use the functional exome, the RNA transcriptome. We use the excretion proteome, which means that we're looking at the urine. We pick up 6,000 and greater proteins in the urine that are related to function and disease. And we understand what those dynamics are. And we are learning more and more about it. Ever since this mRNA COVID stuff and the vaccine complications, we're learning a whole lot more about, transcription and translation errors like crazy. And these people that have had post-accelerated cancers, post-vaccine. And we're seeing the relationships that they have on the body systems because we understand the molecular drivers, right? So we get a better grip on, okay, well, this is what's happening with this person. And then when you do that, you're able to triage a whole lot more fine-tuned. You can put your integrative modalities directly to the targets. You can actually say, okay, this person's got mitochondrial insufficiency, or they've got severe immune competence issues or immune dysregulation, or they've got neuroregulatory disturbances. When you start seeing that and you got the hub strategy, and then you put your integrative strategies to build and reinforce, you've got such a very, expo dynamic movement that's happening there to really power up the body, power up the system, right?
Like what you said there in the beginning of this beautiful little diatribe was the tumor represents yesterday.
Yes.
Our listeners have got to let this in, because this is one of the biggest failures, in my opinion, of standard of care oncology. We are so hyper-focused on the tumor.
Yes.
We completely disregard the terrain, which is what you're talking about.
Yes.
You're looking at the rest of the information, the rest of the story, as, Paul Harvey would have said in his day.
Yep.
And by the time we come in and treat, our treatment modalities and standard of care are based on yesterday's tumor.
Yes. Yes. And yes.
And sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes yesterday is still happening.
Yes.
Sometimes. But more of the time, the moment and the future have yet to be. And we are sometimes even potentiating people when we treat that tumor of yesterday, use that metaphorically and literally. You actually create new patterns and new things that now that treatment's going to fall even further from its target. And so what Dr. John is describing here is even what we can do in the tissue assay world, the blood and tissue biopsy world, is we can look at like a ctDNA is like, what's sort of the potential here?
Yes.
And the microRNA is what's actually expressing. This is almost like the difference that you're talking about now is like, what are we treating that's in the past? And what are we treating that's happening now? And what are we also heading off at the past for what could come?
Very well said. Because the thing is you got to have that ability to have real-time evaluation and real-time engineering. So in order for you to get to that space, that real-time movement, that means you have to get a whole lot. Think about this, Nasha, for a minute. 10 trillion different combination of peptides that are housed within the human body. 10 trillion, more than 10 trillion different combinations, right? When we talk about billions of base pairs in nucleotide movement and the DNA constructs and communications through the RNA and all of this ribosomal movement to allow for the proper transcript and translation ability. That stuff that's happening is a constant feedback system that depends upon the cooperation of every protein in the body. And every protein of the body is made up of a polypeptide construct. And there's 10 trillion peptide combinations. So from a molecular expression point of view, I guess I'm trying to paint the picture. If you want to know what real time looks like, you have to get really better at real time viewing.
Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Nasha Winters. And if you've been listening to me for a while, you know my North Star is this: stop chasing symptoms and start rebuilding health from the ground up. That's why we created Metabolic Regen, an education platform rooted in the Terrain 10, the framework that I've learned to apply to myself and to tens of thousands of patients over 2 decades of clinical practice in cancer care. This isn't about cramming more protocols into your brain. It's about learning to think differently, to see patterns, to read the body's terrain, and to meet patients, or even yourself, where you are. Whether you're a clinician just starting your integrative journey, or a seasoned practitioner ready to bring metabolic and mitochondrial medicine to your toolkit, Metabolic Regen is here to support you. Inside, you will find immersive courses, real case studies, mentorship, and a global network of like-minded colleagues, all of us pulling together to change the story of medicine. If you're ready to be part of that shift, join us at metabolicregen.com. Let's rebuild medicine from the mitochondria out. Yeah. Yeah. And this is huge because so just to be clear, a lot of patients are hearing about peptide therapies and, for anti-aging and longevity medicine and maybe even cancer care. We're not talking about the same thing here.
No.
Can you maybe differentiate between those two? Because I'm afraid people are going to walk away and go out and look for their closest peptide dispenser.
I'm not knocking BPC 157.
No, right. Yeah. They've got some utility.
I'm not knocking MOD-C. I'm not mocking SS31. If you want to start using, your Western prescribing movement of just saying, look, I got a mitochondrial insufficiency. I'm going to give the patient this. I'm going to give the patient that. These peptides do help in a lot of situations, but they're out here. They're out here.
That's
they're not central. That's the difference. It's kind of like if you take something from the outside and try to match it to a molecular expression, you're already at a disadvantage because you're trying to match a drug or you're trying to match a nutrient. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying that it's not an efficient thing forever. It's only a temporary movement. Understanding that vibrational energetic of knowing what the molecular interface is then you are going to know what that construct looks like and where its deficiencies are. Where is the deficiency? Because the thing about it is if you're going to engineer a good airplane, you want to make sure that you're looking at every system right, because you can't afford to have one system not behaving right.
Right.
You get to learn very quickly, as Boeing has learned, and a lot of other, manufacturers have learned that you've got to be precision on a lot of everything in that whole engineering. And well, how much more so in the body? The engineering is so impeccably complex, and it's an amazing movement in how the body performs at every level, that you're actually trying to get to that real-time view. And then when you have that real-time view, you got to do your best to understand where the deficiencies are and how to engineer that better with a better engineering. Whereas your peptides that are off-the-shelf peptides, they're good, but they're not great, right? I mean, they're good, but they're not.
Some can actually be problematic because many of them are growth factors.
That's right.
And you're putting that in. And I would say the vast majority of the off-the-shelf peptides are just that. They're potentiators or growth factors.
Right. There's regulators.
A handful that can be regulators. There's a handful that can be, but again, it may just mostly fall flat because it's not personalized.
Exactly.
And so, what you guys have done is basically you can take a patient's because you take both, correct? Urine and blood.
Because
you're getting different information from both, tissues, from both fluids, if you will.
Yep.
And then you have your own patented technology that you run it through to get kind of the big picture evaluation. But it's not just that you're testing for it, but you're also creating a treatment of it.
Exactly. Yes. You're creating that solution. That's why we call it precision molecular solutions, because we're creating the solution for the deficiencies that we see using the polypeptide constructs, but we're not just using naked peptides. We're using signal peptides. Because we understand the signaling interface of the peptides, how they construct to get better movement into the system through the blood to the location. and how they communicate across the board with sister relationships, because you have all these sister gene communications and protein to protein crosstalk things that happen. So when you're looking at these targets, it's not just about choosing the most popular target.
Right,
like in resilience, well, if I manipulate SIRT3, I'm going to be good. If I manipulate this mitochondrial protein, I'm going to be good. No, you have to understand what the downstream influences are so that you can get a whole picture to coordinate those signals as intelligent as possible. And we're trying to get even better at doing that every day because of the fact that we're trying to get a higher sensitivity read and all these other things. And we're learning a lot about that. But look, I mean, the other thing is that, you know, you're not going to have perfection automatically. You got to work through it. And, you know what I mean?
Like iterate.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to iterate. And my imagination. So this actually segues nicely into, in the last few months, there has been a lot of talk around the promise, the hope, and the excitement around, you know, a $500 million investment into microRNA cancer vaccines, and everyone celebrating that from the rooftop. And yet myself, many others in this community, and people like Dr. Angus Dalgleish out of, you know, the immuno-oncologists are like, we're just like, hold your horses.
Right.
Why? So then everyone thinks that certain political parties are the devil or certain people are the devil for wanting to pull the reins back on this a little bit.
Yep.
Can you please explain why we are not as celebratory and excited about an off-the-shelf microRNA vaccine option for the cancer community? Can you speak to what it is that we have learned in the last few years?
Absolutely. We're doing a lot of work in this area right now. As a matter of fact, we just did a mass blitz of a case study of a 31-year-old female that has aggressive bladder cancer stage 4. You don't ever hear about a 31-year-old.
Never, ever.
Right, ever. She was perfectly healthy before she received mRNA vaccine. And she received, 3 shots. And within a year of receiving those 3 shots, she had an aggressive, very angry, proliferating, migrating, head to toe, everywhere cancer. She's still alive. We're
also
working
really
with her.
Weird.
We're working with her. We started in January 2025, and we did her primary cancer design, and we also did what we call a spike mitigation design, which is an mRNA nucleotide issue that's where the REVIS system comes in. The REVISS is the transcription translation stability. That means we get to understand where the aberrant pathways have been supercharged up by the spike fragmentation, right? So here's the thing about your circular RNAs or your microRNAs, or what we call the endless. There's a company out there that has actually patented what they call endless RNA. mRNA it's a very poorly designed technology. It's a poorly engineered technology. It has no regulatory stops. And you're not going to, CRISPR has no regulatory stops.
Right.
Okay. The mRNA vaccine.
You can see miracles and you can see nightmares.
Yes, absolutely. The mRNA vaccine is what has been unleashed on the population is experimental gene therapy with the mRNA vaccine. And a lot of people didn't realize the fact that because of course, they're not using gene as a word, but experimental gene therapy has been unleashed on the population, and it has caused millions of deaths, millions. So the thing about this is, and this is like very strong because here's the thing is that these engineers have engineered it such that you can't always tell the telltale signs of what is going wrong.
Right.
They have
very convoluted.
That's right. And they put it in constructs and areas and chromosomes, or they've taken certain things out to think that you're not going to be able to trace it. Well, we're actually in the process of beginning to understand some of those traceable elements that are creating this chaos in the body, where so many people are suffering post-malignant, malignant issues because of immune failure, because of cellular regulation failures, because of mitochondrial failures, because of microbiome shifts that are incredibly destructive. All of these different things. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the circular RNA, the microRNA, the endless RNA, the regular mRNA, as we know it in the technology platform, is inherently flawed. It's just inherently flawed. And the only way something like this would ever work is if there was a regulatory movement into it in this molecular interface. There has to be a molecular regulation to occur to allow for a better predictability and a better regulation, and to allow for a stop mechanism to happen when a stop mechanism needs to happen.
Yeah. Well, and here's where I'm certain that there will be a lot of listeners who will start to tune out because of this conversation. But I want to really encourage you to please just stay present and curious, folks.
Yes.
Because as a clinician who's now trained well over 1,000 other clinicians around the globe, when it's me seeing a few things, I'm just wondering, like, is it just my own filter, my own bias, or what have you? But when you have literally hundreds of clinicians and we're collecting the data ourselves, we're seeing this, we started to see strange things. Many of us have been in practice for many, many moons and suddenly started seeing patterns that we've never seen in our practices, right? And that's when we started to query of what have we done? And now, because there have been some non-industry driven research out there, some non-biased researchers out there have been looking to say, what's happening? What are the mechanisms of action? So what Dr. John just spoke to is that things like we know that the spike protein sits on top of mitochondria on complex 1, which that explains pretty much all of the weird chronic illnesses from acute cardiovascular events to dementias, to cancers, to autoimmune flares. Like right there, it's like you literally kill off the very fountain of life, the mitochondria.
Yes.
From the very first part of its process. Well characterized, what I'm describing, not conjecture, not theory, easily seen over and over and over again in testing like the seahorse, which is a mitochondrial respiration test, right? So there's that piece. You spoke about the metabolic piece. We see that we woke up this PIK3CA pattern, which
big
is
player right there. That pattern that you're talking about, huge. We have so much patient data sets that prove that. Yes.
Huge. And they're querying now about 70% of all cancer types have this as the ignition to the whole cancering process. And it is down the cascade of mTOR and AMPK and MAPK and basically a metabolic nightmare that just goes out of control. And then these components of cytokines, you talked about loss of immune surveillance. So a loss of the recognition, response, and remembering aspect of our immune system is being basically just dismantled. And so that's why we end up with crazy autoimmune issues, crazy cancer issues, crazy cytokine inflammatory driven issues. It's a mess. Like we as clinicians in the cancer space, and I've gone to many conferences, non-CME, because we can't talk about these things at CME. In fact, this weekend I was speaking at a conference that if you say one thing about this, you lose the CMEs. So doctors and researchers are being stifled everywhere for this conversation. But I promise you, it's actually very easy to see. We can run tests like IgG4, which is one of the subtype complexes now. Just go, folks, and do a Google on IgG4 in cancer in PubMed and see what you find. It's a little concerning. Mm-hmm. And then the same thing, like in our world, we can check things like fibrinogen activities and D-dimers to understand the implications of this, which is building the scaffolding for cancer to move about the building.
Yes.
Through this. So I just gave this whole soliloquy because I'm trying to help harness people in to say, we're not talking conspiratorially here. We're talking very data conclusive.
This is actually foundation evidence. Like we picked up on this cancer case, this bladder cancer case, a sentinel expression on ctDNA. And of course, we need to have more multiple reads on it, but we picked up an incidental movement into chromosome 19, where outside of the safe harbor on chromosome 19, when chromosome 19 is a very strong directive, that part of the chromosome on immune regulation and suppression of oncogenic driving systems. So the thing is what we're seeing is that the mRNA vaccine fragmentation has created a translocation fusion event. Now we need to prove that more because we need to have more data and we need to have more reads. But in order for us, when you actually see an incidental ctDNA on ctD, this is not the genome.
Right,
We
right.
actually picked it up,
Wow.
flagged on the ctDNA expression of this cancer patient who is very, very ill, right? That's what makes it clinically relevant. So now in the molecular world, in the genetics world, they'll say, well, you need to have this read, that read, multiple reads, that read, everything has to be absolutely perfect in alignment, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
One thing is we picked up this incidental flag, which is showing the possible integration into that chromosome 19 in a very sick, advanced cancer patient that should never, ever have this bladder cancer, ever, because she's only 31 years old.
Right. And for the listeners, a typical bladder cancer is in typically older white men who've had a long history of lots of excess, like chemical exposure,
Exactly.
drugs, alcohol.
In their
like
70s.
Exactly. It's super,
Yeah.
it really got a lot of environmental and a lot of age related and a lot of lifestyle related in older populations. This is not, I've never in my personal career in 30 plus years ever heard of a single young woman with bladder cancer.
31 years old. I mean, it's
really
it's terrible to see. So you have to come back, Nisha, you got to come back to the main very core strength is the patient is very sick and fighting for her life. So you can go through your little genetic conundrums if you want to, and I try to prove that you got to perfect that, have multiple reads that, and everything else. Look, I understand the molecular world very well, but I also understand the clinical aspect. The clinical aspect is that if you have a suffering patient and they're experiencing some very aggressive metastatic cancer from head to toe, and they're very sick fighting for their life,
you got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do.
My God. So, what you're speaking to is also, so I know we kind of went off the track of this microRNA piece. However, I also feel because I've known about you long before the COVID era, right? You've been at this for a long time. So it feels and sounds to me like Neo7 may even have solutions for our long-termers, like our long haulers.
Yes.
And even for some of the spikeopathy potentiated cancer processes that we're seeing out there.
Yes, correct.
Because you're basically retraining the body to behave as it was divinely designed to do.
Yes. We're mitigating any kind of expressive changes that we see that are really strongly coding errors that are caused by the spike retention and the spike fragmentation. We see it and we mitigate it. And every patient that we've designed for so far, they don't demonstrate the same personalized targets of where it's hit them.
Exactly. It's so unique. This is the other thing about the microRNAs.
Yeah.
They're not universal.
That's right.
It's like dropping a smart bomb into the body and just watching to see what happens.
You know what? I just told this to my colleague today. I said, this woman that's experiencing all this is like a nuclear bomb hit her and it just massively exploded. Right. I mean, there's no other way I can explain it because it's hit virtually every compartment of her and every compartment of her cell has been affected by this. Yeah.
Amazing. And so your technologies are definitely evaluating the individual. So like looking at the pattern and designing the solution simultaneously.
Yes, correct. Yep.
And so that's where, folks, we're going to be giving you all the links to how to learn more. Dr. John's site has a lot of really cool videos and explanations of the actual technology and how to work with him. But I really want to speak because we just kind of landed our own smart bomb on the listeners right now because this can feel very overwhelming. But let me let everybody in on a secret here. My own health has suffered tremendously the last few years out of my sheer worry. And I'm going to get emotional of what this has done to our population.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful for people who are innovators, who are thinking outside the box, who are persevering, who are resilient, like you and like so many others that are coming together saying, we've got a problem and we have to be part of the solution.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful for these conversations because it can feel really grim and overwhelming sometimes.
Agreed. Yes, very much so. Yeah.
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 And then it must feel so rewarding when you can crack the code.
Yes, absolutely. And we get to see some of these people, like we have a 81-year-old guy who's an avid golfer and he's a very successful man. And he got the COVID shot and it just floored him. And he's just saying, I don't know if I can ever come back at 81. And I just said, yes, you can.
Wow. I got chills.
We did his molecular profiling and we did his mitigation plan. And guess what? The guy is out there on the golf course doing what he loves.
I stinking love. We do want to remind him to be careful with the glyphosate exposure.
Yes.
On that field. So again, I appreciate that's one of the things you said earlier is you still need to do the other terrain things. This is not its own panacea, but it certainly helps give us a lot of runway that we would otherwise not have.
That's a good way of saying it. The runway is there. So the hub strategy and you got your integrative terrain movement that is, when you have a good hub, you all of your terrain begins to, everything just clicks then, right? It just starts clicking in motion and then it makes a big difference. It really does.
Oh my gosh. And so I love to kind of round this out because we took people on a very crazy journey today, but I want them to get a little bit more. You started out giving a sense of your story and who you are and the resilience and the perseverance of your nature, which I think was very obvious and wove into our discussion. But I love to kind of finish out these interviews with these sort of rapid fire questions, kind of a mix of your personal and professional life, because it's kind of fun for people to know you, your heart, your soul. So are you up for a couple rapid fires?
Sure. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So first one, what molecular marker do you think is the most overlooked in chronic illness currently?
The molecular marker that I think is chronically overlooked is I would say, mTOR is probably it, even though it's the most popular, it's the most misunderstood marker.
Yeah, we're aware of it, but standard of care isn't doing a heck of a lot for it. I mean, everolimus has fallen short.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other one is P53. So I have to tell you that one.
That's massive. That's actually another place where we're seeing spike protein having a major. It's making P53 recovery even more challenging than we ever had. It was already challenging and it added another level.
Yes.
So
true.
yes. All right. Next one, peptides or small molecules? Which would you bet on if you had to pick one?
Peptides.
I love it. Biggest myth about precision medicine you'd love to bust?
Precision medicine, the biggest myth is that it's still, I don't know, seen in the light of convention. So that's the biggest myth, is that it's rooted in the standard view of conventional medicine, and that has to be busted, because in order for precision personalization to be really blossoming, it has to come away from convention.
Yes, I love that answer. I love it. Okay, what's the biggest bottleneck keeping therapies like yours from reaching more patients?
Well, the biggest bottleneck right now is probably I would say the environment that, it's getting a little bit better maybe with the three-letter agencies and being more aware of what should be people focused, but we got a long way to go right there in that. And I would say that from the standpoint of how science is structured right now, it's very biased on the way research is rooted in, current systems like the NIH and, the CDC and the FDA, right? So, I mean, if we look at that, it's like these three-letter agencies have to become a lot more innovative in their approaches, and they have to embrace personalized medicine for what it really is, in my opinion. Okay. And that's a big bottleneck. The other bottleneck is that people have to pay a lot of money out of their pocket, and it's not always available to everybody, because it's, even though it's modestly priced, it's still, for the most part,
out of reach.
It's an untouchable thing for some people. You know what I mean? And we're trying to work on that, Nasha, on getting it available to more people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And like, this is where, if this was standard of care, it would have other subsidies to help fund it, right? It would have other resources.
Yeah.
And so my hope is that even conversations like this, someone's listening who wants to help create grants or access for this for patients who don't have the means to get this, because I don't believe really good therapies should only be available to people with means. That's one of my goals as well. And I know you and I have talked about this. This is also one of yours. Perfect.
Yes, it is.
Okay. In one word, what does resilience mean to you?
Resilience, in one word, that's a really great one right there. I think you stumped me. Resilience means just complete vibrance.
I love it.
That's just good. Vibrance. I mean, the word vibrant is just something that comes to my inner being when you say resilient.
I love that.
Yeah.
What is one book outside of the scientific medical world that shaped the way you think?
Oh, okay. I've read a lot of books, but I think the one book that's really been shaping me quite a lot is The Power of Your Words.
Ooh, who's the author?
It's not a popular book. It's by E.W. Kenyon and Don Gossett.
Interesting.
And it's coming, and it's part of, it's more of a faith-based type book, but it actually demonstrates the importance of understanding how powerful your confession is and what you say.
Boy, that gives me chills. That sounds very compelling. I'm a big reader. I'll go dig it in.
The Power of Your Words. I could send it to you, but you have to read it with a very reflective spirit, and realize that it really cements in how important it is never to frame negative confession. And I've been working on this very, very carefully. Like, I want to be careful that I don't have a negative confession. I want to be able to frame it from a positive, from a good confession. Power of Your Words. And that's probably a book that's been making a very big impact on me of late.
Oh my gosh, so yummy.
Yeah.
Okay. When you're not immersed in the biotech world, how do you recharge your own resilience, your own vibrancy?
Yes. Well, right now I'm engaged in the Hard 75. Tell me about that. The mental toughness.
Ooh, I love
It's by Andy Frisella. And so my wife and I are both are in this program right now where we have the 5 things that we need to do every day, which includes the personal enrichment part, the good way of eating part, the 2 times of exercising in your day part, the taking a selfie of your progress part, right? And the drinking of a gallon of water a day.
Wow, you're flushing it through.
And I'll tell you what, we've been doing this now. We started this is like our 7th day. And I would say that Hard 75, creates that mental toughness and it's just a real good book. And we're going through that book to help us through mental toughness. And it's a very interesting program because Andy is like a no nonsense guy. And,
cool.
We've been listening to him on the podcast, and he's a guy that's just like, straightforward, no BS, no excuses. If you want to be mentally tough, you're going. And look, if you do not do all 5 of those things in one day, you go back to day 1.
Oh, now that's a little gamification if I ever heard one. Powerful.
Back to day 1. So if you put a little lifesaver in your mouth because you want to freshen your breath, back to day 1 you go.
So cool. Don, you were extraordinary. And I can't wait to see what you're like in 70 more days from now.
I can't wait. Both my wife and I are just saying, we can't wait to see what we look like in 70 more days.
You guys, that is so amazing. And just again, I want to say thank you. Thank you for stepping up in the face of the fire. Thank you for stepping up in the face of all the disbelievers, all the haters, all the naysayers, all the people who are attacking your integrity and your passion and purpose. Thank you for even stepping up and taking care of yourself so you can continue to do this amazing work. And so thanks for joining us today. And I'm really excited about folks hearing this. As much of the crazy conversation, all the different angles we took, I hope and I know people are going to walk away with a lot of gobsmacked experiences from this experience, but to also know that there are some really powerful resources and a powerful innovations out there now and on the horizon. So Dr. John, thank you.
Thank you, Nasha, so much. And God bless you for all the work that you're doing, because I'll tell you, you're making a big impact on a lot of people. I hear it all the time, and I'm just really blessed by you too. So thank you so much for having me on today.
Wow, what a great conversation with Dr. John, bringing both wisdom and bold innovation into a conversation. He's shown us that medicine isn't just about treating disease, folks. It's about designing resilience from the molecular level up. For those listening, if you want to learn more about Neo7Bioscience and Dr. Catanzaro's groundbreaking work, please check out their website, follow his research, and stay connected. And if today's episode sparked something in you, please share it with a friend, subscribe, and keep joining us as we explore the science and the soul of health. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and remember, your biology is your blueprint. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Metabolic Matters. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new exciting episode. Drop your thoughts or questions in the comments, as we'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to check the description below for show notes, guest links, and additional resources to support you in your journey. You can always follow us on Instagram and across social media at Metabolic Matters for updates, insights, and behind-the-scenes content. And a heartfelt thank you to Julie Newmark and Whiskey Flower for the beautiful music that brings this show to life. Until next time, stay empowered, stay curious, and keep metabolizing what matters.